Hello again, everyone. Witch Doctor here, looking at the markets, and I'm looking at the intra-week activity, talking about this week's past activity versus the previous week. Taking a look at the dollar index futures and comparing. You can see here on the far left, we got the dollar index futures, and basically all of these are 4-hour charts. You got the US dollar on the far left, and the yen, Swiss franc, and the Canadian across the top, euro, pound, and Australian dollar across the bottom. And if you want the implications of this, basically why we do this, we have a little bit more in detailed videos that cover this. But the main thing here is that if the dollar goes in one direction, a lot of these currencies have their own responses to this. So you got the previous session, the previous week's low here. Let me identify this for you. Basically outlining last week's high and last week's low. And then this week you can see here in the dollar index futures that we basically were able to break down below the previous week's low here. This is last week's trading range, and you can see last week's trading session in the market. Dollar index futures basically pushing down below low, and in a sense continuation to the downside, breaking down into the low 81s before rallying. You can see 81.20 for pushing back up to 81.70, but a clear break here of the previous week's low, and you can see the downward momentum that was created off of this move. Moving across the board here, the yen really didn't do much, basically retracing all of the range that had been established over the past week. You see here, nice up move, and then this week basically just washing all of it out. But in a sense, not really taking out last week's high or low. You can see that this is an inside week. Okay, so inside of last week's trading range, no real progress being made there in the Japanese yen. You can see here the Swiss franc breaking down below the previous week's low here and continuing to the downside, just like the dollar index. So you can see here the positive correlation with the USD CHF. And then typically what I look for is the same thing here in the Canadian dollar, but the Canadian did not push down below the previous week's low. You can see a big trying to push down below the previous week's low, but got rejected, pushing back up in the face of all that move here. You can see buying order flow that came in, pushing all the way back to the previous week's high, and then you see here the resistance that came into play at last week's high. But overall here, another inside week, just like the Japanese yen. And what's interesting here is that typically what I do is I look for the Japanese, or I look for the Swiss franc and the Canadian dollar here to do basically the same thing. So this the Swiss franc did correspond with what the dollar did, but the Canadian dollar did not. So that's kind of interesting. On the other side of the board here, you can see the euro pushing above last week's high and then breaking out with conviction. Yeah, the breakout here and the attempt to retest the breakout point somewhere around here, but pushing very nicely above the 125 even level, essentially before coming back to the 125 level. But in a sense, you can see this nice move for this week. We had a consolidation week last week, and then this week was nothing but a nice up move. Same thing with the pound here. Basically sideways consolidation last week, but this week breaking out of last week's high, and on top of that, very nice conviction buying here. We're reaching all the way up into the 159 area before pulling back. So basically able to move very convincingly off of the dollar index, move lower. And then when you look at the Australian dollar, very interesting here, not really doing what we're looking at there in the pound and the euro, but you can see here just another sideways consolidation similar to what you were looking at in the Japanese yen and the Canadian dollar. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the Australian dollar, considering you can see here it wasn't even near the highs. It was actually on the opposite side of the spectrum. And when you have the pound up here and the euro up on their highs of the week, that's what I would expect the pound dollar. So this is a little bit of non-confirmation between what the euro and the pound is doing, and that gives me a little bit of a a heads up to what I'm looking for. I'm just looking for confirmation, and the Australian dollar didn't give it. So I'm kind of curious about what we're going to develop into this week. And if you want a little bit more insight into that, go take a look at the premium market wrap video. So we'll see you all a little bit later. Catch up to you in the next market wrap. Stay safe. This is Wish Doctor signing off. We'll see you. While I got you here, I wanted to take a quick moment to say that if you really liked what you're looking at here in the free Forex market wrap video, I wanted to give you the opportunity to come take a look at the premium weekly Forex market wrap video that I do every week. And basically it's a little bit more in depth, or should I say a lot more in depth information about the markets that I cover. And you can see here that in this short video I go over the basics about what I've been looking at on the major currencies. In the more in-depth market wrap video, I take a look at a in-depth analysis on the 6 major currency pairs. You also get actionable trading scenarios. The important thing here is that we're offering a 3-day risk-free trial, so you don't have to pay a cent. It's about a 30 to 45 minute video that'll go through all the major currency pairs that I look at, and it shows you a lot more in-depth analysis and forecast, looking at the longer term picture and the big major trends that are affecting what you're looking at on the lower time frames that you're looking at on a day-to-day basis. So take a moment to go take a look at the premium market wrap video. You can see the link here provided, www.traderstouch.com/3day, and it also includes a free membership to the Traders Learning Network, where you can meet other traders that are like-minded individuals, and they're basically there to help everybody looking at the same markets as you. So good luck, hope it helps, and look forward to seeing you on the inside.